Got this old 94 12 valve in here, and we got to use a Zeus scanner on it. What the hell's going on around here? I wasn't planning on doing a video on this truck because it only came in because the customer was having an issue where it was taking a long time to start. You'd crank and it'd finally come alive, and then you'd put it in gear and it would die, and the only thing that was wrong was the idle adjustment screw was just wore out. So we adjusted the idle, and now it fires right up and it doesn't die when you put it in gear. But whenever I was on the test drive, I noticed that it takes forever to shift from third gear to overdrive, and that the torque converter also was not locking in overdrive. Well, the torque converter not locking ended up just being that the brake pedal switch is bad, and you gotta pull up on the brake pedal for it to turn off. But then the going from third into fourth gear is what I'm gonna show you now. So on these early trucks, the OBD2 port, they ain't got one. So you gotta come over here and you gotta hook up this chingadera to the battery. You gotta hook up this other chingadera here, and then you can plug in your OBD2 port. And I chose to use the Zeus because it's wireless instead of having to run a cable across top of the motor into the cab. This is a 12 valve truck, so the only sensor on the engine that really does anything with how the vehicle runs is the throttle position sensor. It's down here on the side of the injection pump, and that is causing us an issue with going into overdrive. This thing's actually been sitting all day. It's like 40 degrees out. Let's see how she starts. Oh yeah. So if you see, I press the brake pedal down and it's still showing that it's on until I pull up with my foot, and now it's off. So that's keeping the torque converter from locking, because if you have your foot on the brake, it thinks you're trying to slow down. It unlocks the converter. That's normal operation. So we're going to put a new brake switch in there, and that'll take care of that. Next thing we're going to watch here is throttle percentage for the acceleration portion of this video. Now I get to go drive with the old 3 candle power headlights. These new phones really pick up so well on lighting that it does not do justice to how shitty the second gen headlights are. The thing you're going to notice here is as I accelerate, I'm just going to do like mild acceleration. I'm not flooring this thing to get into traffic or anything. I'm just doing normal driving here, and this thing is pig slow, and I'm already showing 60% throttle. Look how slow we're going. There's nothing actually wrong with the throttle position sensor. That's just how much throttle you have to give these trucks to move anywhere. The problem with that reading is that since the truck sees you're giving it 60% throttle, it really wants to hold the third gear shift out for a long time before it goes into overdrive. So there's 2 ways to fix this problem. We can A, add power, which will require less throttle input, so it will shift into overdrive faster, or we can do a throttle position sensor delete. It's a super common thing on these trucks. Here we're going to do a wide open throttle pull from 0 to 80 miles an hour to show you how pig slow this thing is. There's our third gear. It will not shift into fourth. Oh, finally. Still floored. Okay, we're gonna let it out at 80. So that's all the problems, and this white box has the solution. This is a kit from DDP. It comes with their fuel plate for the injection pump, an AFC spring for the fuel control actuator, and then this is a little orifice for the turbocharger to increase the boost pressure. And then this here is our little throttle position sensor delete kit. Got a little adjustable knob here to adjust your voltage range so it changes your shift points. Everybody's got a different recipe for how they like to turn these things up. This truck, the customer is not planning on hot rodding it, but it is turd slow, and he would like it to be a little bit faster without having to worry about exhaust gas temperatures and hurting the engine and things like that. So we're going to do 4,000 RPM governor springs, even though he's not going to use 4,000 RPM, having the 4K springs in there will make this thing run a hell of a lot better. We're going to do the little DDP kit and then the throttle position sensor delete and nothing else, and this thing will run tip-top for what he needs. This little throttle position sensor delete kit came from Gino's garage, and it could not be easier to install. You unplug the throttle position sensor off the injection pump, and you stab these 3 wires in there and throw some heat shrink over them. You run this inside the cab, and then you can just adjust your shift points with this knob if you so desire. Typically, you'll just set it and forget it kind of thing. And yeah, I'm going to put this on there and go show you all that it did in fact fix our shift point problem. Some people will say, and this is something to look out for. So if y'all saw, whenever we were driving, we were having to damn near floor this thing just on normal acceleration. So you're like, okay, well, Ryan, the truck's obviously down on power, and that's what you need to fix. You're putting a Band-Aid on a problem. That's not the case. These trucks are literally just that underpowered. I did confirm that our AFC diaphragm is not ruptured. I put regulated air pressure, and the AFC arm is traveling the full amount at about 15 pounds of boost. Somebody has already gotten in here and loosened the star wheel 100%, so this thing doesn't require any real boost to start getting that fueling arm to push forward. So pretty much like that guarantees that it's not a lift pump, that it's not the injection pump that's causing our lack of power. It's just the way these trucks came. I couldn't help myself. I draw up a little mount for this thing. This is our finished product. Looks pretty nice. Got the little locator pin so that our knob doesn't rotate. I didn't want to mount that knob anywhere in the dash because if you go to service the dash to do an evaporator core or heater core, you've got to take that knob out of there and deal with all the wires. There's no reason for that, and this guy should never need to adjust this knob once I set it. So instead, we decided to make that little bracket and put it on the side of the main wiring harness down here. It's got a nice metal bracket that we use some pop rivets on, and you can adjust it. But once I set this thing, you'll never need to touch it again. But should you, it's nice and easy to access down here. It's out of the way of your feet. You're not going to kick it. And the best thing is if you go to pull the dash out of this truck, you don't have to touch any of this. It's just right there. You got to touch all this, but not that. This is our throttle position sensor unplugged. Check out that nail that somebody's using to back probe that sensor. Nice. So you just push the wires into the connector like they do in the instructions. There it is installed. I like to zip tie the harness really good to the existing harness so that the connection doesn't come undone. Then we just run the wire along the factory stuff down over here and then back up into the cab. On this truck, since it was an automatic, there was a nice little grommet for the clutch and it went right through there. So now we're looking at our throttle position sensor data. Right now it's at 72%. And if I turn this knob counterclockwise, it'll go down in percentage. So now we're down to 20, 5, 0. Knowing from experience, I'm gonna set this about like 40%. Come on, see a little touchy, right there. Leave it at 41%, we'll see how that does with our overdrive engagement. All right, this is with our throttle position sensor delete set at 40% throttle. We're gonna floor it because now the computer doesn't know that we're flooring it. So we're trying to get on the highway right now, right? And then at about 45 miles an hour, there we're in fourth gear now. Or, well, sorry, there's fourth gear. Right at about 50 miles an hour. Truck drives much better. Granted, this thing is still on stock power level, but at least it's not holding that gear shift out for ages. Normally I would play with that setting a little bit to get the shift points just exactly where I want the 3/4 shift. But considering we're about to add 100 horsepower to this thing, it's not going to matter because throttle input is going to be a hell of a lot different once we get all that done. So we'll put all the go fast parts in here and come test drive one last time. And no, this modification does not trip any codes. The only downside of this modification is if you're driving along and your truck shifts into overdrive and you're pulling a trailer or something like that and you need to pass somebody and you floor it, if your truck doesn't have enough power, you'll have to reach over here and press the overdrive off button and that'll kick it down into third gear. That's the only difference between normal driving and that one special scenario. Now it's finally time to take this thing from a snail's pace to a turtle's pace. First order of business is giving her a good blowjob. Don't want any dirt getting down where it shouldn't be. Now there are tons of videos out there on this exact process, so we're not going to be detailing the entire thing. That's how you know she's virgin right there. Still got the wire across her. One of the things that fights a lot of people, and I've fought it in the past, is trying to get the 4 bolts out of this AFC housing, because from the factory there's an anti-tamper bolt right there, and it doesn't have a head on it. It's a bolt that breaks off from the factory when you torque it, and there's a little dimple in the center that you can tighten or you can bang like a Torx T15 into, and that's how most people get it out. But on this one, I decided to take a different approach, because to do the Torx trick, typically you have to pull the intake or bend the fuel lines. It's a real pain in the butt. And then you end up damaging your Torx bit most of the time. So I took this Husky, little air hammer, and I ground a chisel bit to have a nice sharp point on the edge of it, because these bolts are not real tight. I just got down in here at an angle and got on the side of that bolt and just lightly air hammered it, and it turned right out of there. Then you can just pop the AFC housing off. And then underneath that is this fuel plate that sits down inside the injection pump. There's 2 little screws down there that hold it on. And you can see it's our factory fuel plate here. And then our aftermarket one here. It's got a different fuel ramp, so it brings in the fuel a little bit earlier and really makes the truck run a lot better. So these injection pumps have what they call an aneroid valve in here. And as boost pressure from the turbocharger is applied to the backside of this diaphragm via this hose, it increases the travel of this arm, which controls fueling. And this was one of the diagnostic steps that we did whenever we had this injection pump on the truck, is I took out this plug here to make sure that I could see that this thing was moving as it should. And if we increase the pressure here, we will see that arm move forward, and it's holding pressure. See, we're at 15 psi, and if we let off, it goes away. Here on the AFC housing, we've got the same fasteners. It's an anti-tamper, and I'm just going to show you all this is how I did that one in the truck. And you can just unscrew it by hand. I just want to show you all that, since you could not see what I was doing in the truck because it was so tight of an area. The AFC has a bunch of regular screws, and you don't want to strip them out, so put a screwdriver on here with a wrench. You can break all those loose real easy. So if this little diaphragm was ruptured, because boost pressure comes on the backside here and pushes it forward against that spring, see how it's returning, you would never move this arm, and so therefore the injection pump would never add fueling, and then your truck would just be a dog. The other thing we're going to do while we're in here on this AFC housing is this cast elbow bottoms out against the housing. So we're going to take this elbow out and cut some off, and it'll allow it to move that foot further, which will allow the injection pump rack to move further and then deliver more fuel. If you're interested in doing this on your personal truck, I would highly recommend watching this dude's videos. Very informative. Since this is a one-time use fastener, I prefer to take the one regular screwdriver that was holding the AFC housing down to the truck and put this into the AFC diaphragm chingazo here. That way all 4 of these screws match. And then we go to bolt this down to the truck, we'll be missing 2 screws because one was the dummy screw and then one's there, and we'll replace those with 8mm hex bolts, which is what the other side's held down with, so that everything has the same style fastener, and you're not going to remove this and you need an Allen screw here and a regular screwdriver there. In most cases, on top of doing all of these modifications to the injection pump, we would also adjust the timing, but to adjust the timing on a P-pump truck, it's kind of a pain in the butt. You got to pull the timing cover off the front of the motor. The customer opted to not do that because of the cost, and I don't blame him. It's a few hours worth of labor to do it, and it'll still run plenty good the way it's set up for what he's after. The next thing we're going to do on this thing is change the governor springs. You can see them right there. And the only warning I have for you is that if you're going to use the starter to turn the engine over so you can do one set of governor springs and then the other, I highly recommend you make sure that the fuel pump lever that is not on the engine anymore is not in the up position. Because the first time I went to do this on my personal truck over a decade ago, I bumped that starter and that son of a gun fired up and it was puking oil everywhere, and we couldn't figure out how to shut it down. And yeah, fun times. Don't do that. A customer of mine bought this tool from Power Driven Diesel for doing the governor springs, and it's pretty handy, and it was free to me. His name was Alex Poss, so thanks, Alex. I'm still getting some use out of this thing. You can do it with a pair of needle nose pliers, but this tool's pretty neat. This is what the AFC looks like on the engine. You got two 8mm, and then we had the safety bolt here, and then the regular screw here. Well, these are the two bolts that are supplied with the kit. Why the hell do I want 8mm and then Allen bolts when I need to potentially adjust this thing? I don't want to have to get different size fasteners, so we're going to put two more 8mm on this side, dadgummit. How hard was that? This is the factory outlet that goes to the wastegate, and we need to put this orifice outlet in here so we can increase boost pressure, but unfortunately it's at an angle. So I'm going to index this so that it will be facing the same direction as the original outlet, so our hose isn't like at a weird angle or kinked or something. Voila! You got to pull this fuel feed line off from the fuel filter housing to the injection pump, and these dowdy washers are old enough to drink at this point, so don't be reusing them. Get you some new ones. We've got all the fuel modifications done on the injection pump. The only thing remaining is we're going to put this TorqueTech overflow valve in place of that wore out old factory one. This truck doesn't have a ton of miles on it, but the factory one doesn't have as high a pressure as this one. Increasing the fuel pressure will help with all the other fuel modifications we've done. Clear prop. Uh-oh, she's angry. That's because we had the fuel system open. It had a little air in there, but it's good now. Nothing spraying out under here. We must have done our job right. So right now we just got this thing back on the road. We're in overdrive, and I'm going to floor it right now. And it's taking a really long time to respond. There's no smoke coming out the tailpipe, but eventually it will. There it is. Start to pick up some speed. So we're going to adjust our pre-boost fueling on the back side of the AFC to bring in that fueling a little bit earlier. Sorry about the poor lighting. We are literally on the side of the highway. But on the back side of the AFC housing, that nut and bolt system that was underneath that cap that we took off, we're just going to crack that nut loose, and then we're going to run that bolt in, and that will move the AFC foot forward and allow the engine to receive more fueling before the boost actually starts pushing that arm forward. Here we're going 60 again after the AFC adjustment. I'm going to floor it. You'll see just a small puff of black, and then now we're going. So that's the way we want it, nice and clean. Okay, we're going to do the same 0 to 80 test we did at the beginning before the modifications. Much better. And lastly here, we're just going to do like a 60% throttle pull to simulate merging into traffic. Now that you don't have to floor it, it's just normal driving. That's exactly what I was after. This thing drives perfect, really nice manners. You can floor it, it doesn't smoke out the highway, and it's really responsive for a stock 12 valve. Now keep in mind, it does have a stock air intake, stock exhaust, so it can only move so much air in and out of the engine. So it's not a race car, but this responded the exact way I wanted it to, and I think the customer's really gonna like it.